When this album came out, and the album in question is King's Disease 2. When this album came out, I was like, man, it would be a real cool idea that I could do for a YouTube video, because I do YouTube videos now besides the pod, just for fun, because I can't just do one thing really well. I have to do a bunch of things pretty good instead of honing in on that one thing other than music. I'm pretty damn dope at music. I was like, yo, it'd be a real cool visual thing to do for YouTube. What if I just made a list of all of Nas's albums and just kind of talked about them real briefly, and then kind of rounded it up to King's Disease? So since I never sat down to do that idea, and I have this whole stack of paper that's been sitting here, we're going to go ahead and get into it. So we're going to do a album by album review of Nas's discography, ladies and gentlemen. So get ready. 1994, Illmatic, featuring Kid Nas on the cover. This is the heralded classic in Nas's catalog. 5 mics out the gate. The thing that has been the gift and the curse, not to borrow from Jay, but to borrow from Jay at the same time in his career. The fact that his very first album was fire. And he's always had to try to live up to that album. Let me hold this up a little bit more. Hold it up backwards. And, with the album cover, it had Baby Nas on there. And, of course, his album came out right before Ready to Die. And that led to Only Built for Cuban Links. That led to the Shark Niggas diss, a skit where Ghostface and Ray were talking about niggas biting Nas's shit, talking about Biggie stealing Nas's album concept by putting a small black child on the front of Ready to Die, because I don't think that was Biggie's baby picture. It was definitely Kid Nas on the front of Illmatic. But classic album, timeless. I didn't hear it until I was almost 21 years old, because I got in hip-hop game around 97, the hip-hop game. I really became a hip-hop hit around 97 and started kind of catching up from there. And once the world of digital music and leaks and having access to what you wanted exploded pretty much around 2004 for me, then that's when I was able to catch Illmatic for the first time. That I really got to sit down and listen to it. Undisputed classic, though, right out the gate, 5 stars. What else can you really say about Illmatic? So let's throw Illmatic away. I'm done talking about Illmatic because there's nothing left to be said. It was written 1996, featured a Nas a picture of Nas as he was in 1996. This is the album that introduced Nas Escobar to the vernacular of hip hop. Now, on this album, you either love it or hate it. I've met several people. I've seen several people online who love It Was Written. I know several people who were so let down by the fact it wasn't another Illmatic. But anybody who is a true critic or fan of music know that it's very difficult for an artist to be able to recreate their first album and it'd be exactly the same sounds, the exact feeling. You've been writing your first album your entire life leading up to it. So you have all those experiences and everything that you can put into the album. That's just how it goes. Now, with your second album, you're pretty much trying to talk about how you're living now while trying to still connect to that same person you were who did their first album. So as far as It Was Written, it's a good album. Me and Matt actually reviewed this on the Hip Hop Manifesto podcast some years ago. If you want to go to anywhere podcast or podcasted and just look up Hip Hop Manifesto, we did an It Was Written versus Reasonable Doubt episode where we reviewed both albums. And I remember back then, and that's probably the last time I listened to It Was Written in full, I didn't enjoy It Was Written as much. When it was great, it was great. Like, I Gave You Power, obviously, Street Dreams, If I Ruled the World, a lot of classic stuff. But then when you have a song like Nas Is Coming on there, Nas Is Coming, it's kind of hard to take it seriously. So It Was Written was fine. So if let's just do this out of 5. Let's just go by the mic system. Fuck it, the source ain't relevant anymore. So yeah, if Illmatic was a 5, It Was Written was a 3.5 for me. So It Was Written, gone. Next, 1997's The Album by The Firm, featuring the lineup of Nas, Foxy Brown, AZ, and stepping in for Cormega, Nature. Now, I actually did a TikTok not that long ago about Nature's first verse on Banned for TV, or Banned from TV, from Noriega's first album, N-O-R-E, Niggas on the Run Eating. And that verse was just so impactful because it set off Nori's whole album, and it set off one of the most iconic classic posse cuts of all time. Even in the moment of 98 when this was out, I knew this was one of the best posse cuts of all time. I was floored. So I kept sniffing around waiting for that Nature joint to come out. I'm like, yo, when's that Nature album coming out? When's that Nature album coming out? And I remember hearing the single, The Ultimate High, was coming out, and I remember downloading that, and it had that, do you see what I see? And it's like, do you smoke what I smoke? And it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I never ended up listening to the first Nature album. And honestly, I can't remember the last time I heard a Nature album. But this is the album that Dr. Dre put together, or helped put together the firm. It was supposed to be the super group to help establish Aftermath. I don't know. I can't remember if it came out on Aftermath. It may have. But of course, it had songs like Firm Biz with Dawn Robinson from En Vogue on the hook. It had also Phone Tap was on there. Not a well-received album. I thought it was fine for the time. I mean, it was 97, so this came out shortly after it was written, and this is kind of in the middle of the Jiggy era really taking off for Bad Boy, the Shiny Suit era. So with that being said, this album was kind of lost in the sauce, where, again, diehard Nas fans who didn't love It Was Written, did not want to hear Nas like this, and then your fans of Nas who enjoyed It Was Written they liked it, but it still wasn't a great album. So out of 5 mics, we're going to just give this a 2. I think a 2 is solid. So just had to throw that in there because I was trying to go chronologically through his career. Now we come to 1999's I Am, previously called I Am, the autobiography. On the cover was Nas, as he was at his age at the time, except he was dressed as a pharaoh. I don't know if that was just digital effects or if my man really painted himself gold and then they kind of put the pharaoh around him. But this was my very first Nas album. I'm sure I've mentioned it on the podcast before because I talked about Nas at least twice on here, probably 3 times because of the whole Khalees situation. But I remember talking about him when I thought he had retired and he wasn't really going to make a big deal about it and he was just going to quietly retire. And I definitely was talking a lot of shit about the Nasir album, which I still don't enjoy to this day, and we'll get to here shortly. It'll be very shortly. It will be a very brief section, but we'll get to it. I Am is one of my favorite Nas albums ever. And it's terrible. I know it. But since it was my very first album, and let me tell the story again, went to Costco, Price Club, my dad was going through the music section, saw it came out. I had just read about Nas. I read an interview in The Source. They'd had this great cover. I believe the logo was purple, and Nas was in a wife beater. It had a black bandana. It was going through one of his belt loops on his pants, and he kind of had his hands like a praying sign, and you could see the chain behind him. And I read that interview, and I immediately was amazed by Nas because this is my first real experience in Nas. Like I kind of knew Nas. I knew if I ruled the world, and I didn't know Illmatic yet. So this is my first exposure to Nas. I was like, yo, Nas is so dope. Nas is so dope. Plus, I saw the video for Nas's like top 10 Nas song. And I heard that and I was like, yo, that's dope. That is fire. And to this day, I still think it's one of the greatest rap songs I've ever heard in my lifetime. But on this album, there were songs such as You Won't See Me Tonight featuring the late great Aaliyah. He had a song with DMX on there. He had We Will Survive, which was kind of about, what up, big? I know shit was rough after you slid. You in God's hands now. Keep a place for me, kid. Undying Love, a great storytelling song, one of the great storytelling songs in Nas's career is on there. And also, what was the DMX song? I'm thinking about the wrong song. I'm not looking it up. DMX is on there. DMX steals a show. There is a Dr. Knock Boots on there, which is a very funny song in the vein of Cashmere Thoughts, I kind of think, by Jay-Z on Reasonable Doubt. I love this album. I have no business loving it. New York State of Mind Part 2's on here, which I love. Maybe slightly more than original. Not really, but it's close just because it was my first exposure. Ghetto Prisoners, Rise, Rise, Rise is on here. Yeah, I love this album. So, I mean, it's my mics. So I'm gonna give this a 3.5. Love me some I Am. Follow that up with Nostradamus, which what happened was I Am got heavily bootlegged. That's why it went from a 2-disc album, which was going to be called I Am the Autobiography, into Nas re-recording a lot of songs. A lot of the songs ended up on the first Lost tapes. Some of them made it to Nostradamus. Of course, we had the lead single, Nasty Nas Esco to Escobar. Now he is Nostradamus. Now on the cover, we had Nas, Hoodie Nas with the black hoodie. Had some good joints on here that get slept on, like Project Window, I think, with Ron Osley was on here. He had The Life We Chose is on here. The beat is not good for Life We Chose, but DJ Junior Tech did a blend tape years ago, and he took that and put it over something else, and it was so dope. And I was like, yo, Nas really killed this. The beat just sucks. And we all know how Nas is about beat selection. So that was on here. Of course, You Owe Me's on here. The song that Jay-Z drugged Nas about, is it Uchi Wally Wally? Is it One Mic? Is it Black Girl Lost or Shorty Owe You for Ice? That kind of thing. Nostradamus was fine. He tried to do the whole DMX thing and put out 2 albums back to back at the same time. It was rough going. He did it, but he definitely did not do what DMX did and come in at #1 on Billboard twice. So this is fine. I mean, I say Nostradamus is probably a 1.5, 2 mic. I'll give it a 2 mic just to be nice. Yes, I left out QB's Finest. It's a compilation album. Yes, I left out Brain Farts. Stillmatic, 2001, featuring Nas in the orange velour tracksuit. Classic album, 5 mics. No one expected him to come back at Jay like he did. Matt was talking to me the other day about how it felt like, who are we talking about? Were we talking about Versus or about KRS-One? And I was talking about how no one ever made KRS humble in a way, because KRS has always had supreme confidence, and there's never been anybody who could really say, and I'm sure there will be people out there who will say, sorry, but honestly, I don't know anybody who will say that KRS lost a battle, like for real, and I definitely feel like KRS is in the same boat where they didn't lose a battle. So there's that, of course. So KRS is kind of an asshole, is what it comes to. KRS is an all-time great. I love KRS. He's on my top 20 MCs of all time. But at the same time, he's a bit of a jerk because no one's ever knocked him down a peg. Jay-Z came in and knocked Nas down a peg when he dropped Takeover. So Nas came back and then knocked Jay-Z down a peg when he dropped Ether, which of course made Jay-Z immediately respond with Super Ugly, and then your homegirl did Battle of the Beats, Angie Martinez, and then she's like, hey, Ether is Super Ugly, and then everybody said Ether, and then Nas won the battle. No, Nas did not win the battle. But Stillmatic's a great album, has Rewind on it. It has, oh man, so many great songs. It has Got Yourself a Gun on there, it has One Mic. It is a very listenable album, and I still love this album to this day. 5 mics. Easy. Lost Tapes, 2002. One of the most cohesive Nas projects, even though it was a bunch of leftovers that didn't make it on IM pretty much. 5 mics. You listen to Do-Rags and then go all the way through, man. It's a classic album. You can't deny it. You can't deny it. I'm a straight rider. You don't want to bang with me. Godson, 2002. I love this album as well. My homie Wes had this. We were roommates, and I listened to it, and I immediately fell in love with it. Not as favored in most circles as Stillmatic or Illmatic, but I do really enjoy this. Plus, he was going through the death of his mom, which I can relate to very heavily now. But I just really thought it was a nice, authentic look at who Nas wanted to be and continue to be after all the heat had died down from Stillmatic. So Godson, shirtless Nas on the cover. Yeah, I just really find that album to be good. So I'm gonna give Godson a 4.5, honestly. Street's Disciple, 2004, Last Supper Nas, when he recreated the Last Supper with a bunch of himself. Interesting cover choices again, Nas. And Street's Disciple was very good. Okay, no, I didn't mean that. Street's Disciple was very bloated, very bloated, very big. It was a double CD, so you're going to get that, of course. As far as good songs, I mean, he had the song with his dad on there, and Made You Look was on here. Made You Look was on here. One of the best Nas records is on this album, and it just gets lost in the sauce, and that's crazy. No, Made You Look was on Godson. Made You Look was on Godson. I'm sorry. Well, I think he had the Virgo was on this album, and These Are Our Heroes. He called Kobe a coon. That was interesting, Tom. I just thought this album was too big. Never really made a big impact on me. It was nice to have a Nas album that was that long, but honestly, this is not what's hot in the streets. I'd give Streets Disciple a solid 3 mics just for effort, really. Hip Hop is Dead. Loved it when it came out in 2006. You got Black Rose Nas throwing the rose on hip hop's grave. Me and Shiv were crazy about this album for many years. It has not aged well, however. Still has some bright spots, but as you can tell, I can't even think of any songs off of it other than that awful investigator voice Nas is trying to do. Like, yeah, see, like he's trying to do that, and I thought it was so dope back then. Hip Hop is Dead was on there, which was a pretty decent record. Hip Hop just died this morning and is dead. And of course, Black Republican was on here as well. Hip Hop is Dead is definitely probably about a 2.5. If I'm willing to go Streets Disciple, Streets Disciple is 2.5. So this is a 3. Streets Disciple is a 2.5. Untitled, we have Scarred Nas with the lashed in on his back. Originally supposed to be called Nigger. It came out in 2008. At the time, again, this is an album that I went crazy for with Shiv. Thought it was one of his dopest, most political pieces of work. Thought he was doing an amazing job as far as being political and talking about the fact that racism's still alive. They just be concealing it. But again, it has not aged that well. In the moment, I thought it was really great. This is definitely a 3 album. I don't think it's any better than that. I don't think it's any worse. Also, I remember he had that Hero song, which kind of contradicted the whole album, but he had to try to sell records. Then we had 2010's Nas and Damian Marley, Distant Relatives album. They're together on the cover. I never thought much of this. I know Shiv enjoyed it a lot. I was more resistant to reggae when I was younger, so I rarely paid much attention. Listened to this. I think I listened to it like once. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I kind of never thought about it again. So I can't really give this a proper mic rating. So I won't. We did not get another Nas album until Life is Good, when we had Green Dress Nas holding the dress that Khalees supposedly left in his closet after she moved out. This came out in 2012. I loved this album for a long time. I still do enjoy it a lot. I'd say it's a 4 mic album. This album, of course, had the song for Destiny on it, Daughters. He also had some other joints. He had the one that what is it? Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. He had that one joint that Salam Remy did. He said, Heavy D gave me this. Heavy D told Salam, give me this to rock to. And I liked it a lot. Some, maybe a few beat selections here and there, but I find this to be a 4 mic album. Here's Nasir. We had the classic photo of the kids against the wall being profiled, the black kids. This came out in 2018. Kanye produced this when he was doing his 7 song albums and stuff. I thought Nas is often offbeat on the whole album, as I said, and yeah, fuck that album. Half a mic for that. Lost Tapes 2. I actually have not listened to this. They have the Decaying tape on there. I enjoyed Lost Tapes 1 a lot. I'm sure I would enjoy this too. I need to actually throw it in the queue to check it out. So I really can't give this a proper mic rating. Which brings us to King's Disease 1 which was the Red Angels 2020, produced all by Hit Boy. Won Nas's first Grammy ever, which is crazy considering Nas has been in the game for since 91, 92. King's Disease, I thought it was very dope. I thought it was his best work, probably since Life is Good, because I really did still like Life is Good. King's Disease is definitely a 4 for me. So 4 mics for that. So I like that a lot. Which brings us to King's Disease 2. Red Nas on the cover, 2021. We got the back-to-back joints. He brought Lauryn Hill out of retirement on this, start to finish. It's a 5-mic album, so Nas has at least 3 classics to his name. King's Disease 2 is dope. And I would love to see Nas repeat as best rap album. Probably not going to. He has some stiff competition out there, and I'm not talking about Donda or Certified Lover Boy. I enjoyed both of them, but I don't really have much to say about those past that. So there you go. King's Disease 2 is actually an amazing album, and I recommended it to the homies from The Rock, which is shout out to my boys Ed, Matt, Steve, Wes. And I was like, yo, have you guys listened to King's Disease 2? And Steve's like, yeah, I've been listening to that joint. Matt's checked it out. And Matt says he keeps going back to it and listening to it over and over again because he's so impressed with it. And Steve says he listens to it a lot as well. But it's I can't believe we got this cohesive of a Nas album in 2021. I just didn't think that's the energy he would be bringing. So I don't know if we're going to get a King's Disease 3 next year. I'd be all for it. Like I said, I hope he gets recognized at the Grammys again for this. It's an extremely great album. So first recommendation, go check out King's Disease 2. All right. So we're going to switch gears now.